Pan American 747 jumbo jet with 258 people on board has crashed 15 miles north of the Scottish border. The plane took off from London's Heathrow Airport, bound for John F. Kennedy in New York at 6 o'clock this evening. Pan Am flight number 103 disappeared from radar screens 25 miles north of Carlisle. It went down near the town of Lockerbie in Dumfriesshire. The plane crashed into a petrol station close to a housing estate. Eyewitnesses say they saw a huge explosion and a 300-foot fireball.
Colin, on your right, please.
Colin, right straight ahead.
And one time right here.
I mean, when someone close to you, someone you love very much in your family, gets murdered, you get handed a life sentence. So never mind 35 years. Jane, my wife, and I will both go to our graves, still grieving for the loss of Flora. She left our house to go down to Heathrow with her sister, who was then old enough to drive. And that was the last time I saw her was then. She was excited then about going to visit her boyfriend. I don't remember words. I remember big hugs. You know, how fantastic times, what a hugs. Suffice it to say that I am happy, positively happy that a man of the calibre of Colin Firth was found to play me, because it will make the impact for future historians easier to find. I'm satisfied that Colin Firth will do his utmost to portray somebody who honestly believes he has been searching diligently for the truth over all this in the name of the brutal murder of his own daughter and all those other people. I liked Colin Firth very much at meeting him. It was a terrible bind to have it keep it all secret, because he actually came to lunch with us here in the middle of all the secrecy. We're looking around, who's spying on us, who's going to see. I'm delighted that he's got the part of playing me, and honoured that that's the case.
Almost 15 years on, a haunting reminder of that night sits in a hangar at Farnborough, a section of the plane's fuselage showing where the bomb exploded.
Libya was first accused of bombing Pan Am 103 in 1991. When it refused to hand over Abdel Basit al-Megrahi and Al-Amin Khalifa Fahima, the two suspects named by the Scottish authorities, it found itself hit by sanctions from the United States and the United Nations.
The first time I went to see Gaddafi, Gaddafi knew very little about me, and I had to take steps to avoid getting shot by asking to go and see him, because the first time I met him was in his glory hole just outside his home in Tripoli. And of course he was surrounded by his personal bodyguard, who were all female. But when I went to see him, I had to ingratiate myself with him, so I explained to him that my father had been a regular army officer, and I knew, of course, that Gaddafi himself had had some of his training at Sandhurst in Britain before he became a senior Libyan army officer. And so I explained that to him, and I took him a book of pictures of Flora. And when I went in there, we had a conversation that lasted about 3/4 of an hour, the beginning of which I was pretty terrified because I knew he might sort of have me shot. And then he asked me to give him the book of pictures. So I started rummaging in my briefcase, which I'd had to make special provision to get his thugs to allow me to bring in with me in case it should contain a bomb, that sort of thing. When I went to rummage in there, I saw something else that I wanted to do, which was I had lapel badges. I'm not wearing one today, but what they said on the lapel badges was, Lockerbie, the truth must be known. And that's the simple thing that we've been looking for, is the truth about Lockerbie for 35 years now. But when I got this out, I looked at it, what I'll do is I'll pin this on his gown. He was wearing a beautiful green. Green was the national colour of Libya. He was wearing this lovely green gown. I'll go and pin it on his gown. I can't think how foolish it was, and it still makes me nervous to think about it, but I got up and went over, and I pinned this lapel badge. It was a thing that had a pin, safety pin through the back. I pinned it on his gown. As I approached him, you could hear click, click, click from all around. This was the lady guards who were guarding him, taking the safety car catches off on their AK-47s. They were all getting ready in case I did something rash. But I would never do that again now. I know too much about the whole scheme, but that's what I did in my naivety at the time. And when I left him, he was wearing a badge saying, "Lockerbie, the truth must be known." I think, well, of course, fundamentally what makes me angry is that it ever happened. Because those two warnings, the Helsinki warning and the BKA warning between them, should have been enough by any sensible person's assessment, I would have thought, to ensure that some steps were taken to try to protect aircraft from being damaged, destroyed, by what was anticipated to be a major bombing of a US aircraft. Well, all I can say is that everything that I've done since Lockerbie, I've done in the hope of doing some good as a result of this atrocity, and getting to the truth is the way of doing some good, I would have thought. And one of the things I did do after Lockerbie, I can't remember the exact dates, but I think it was 6 or 9 months after Lockerbie, was I did take an exact copy of the Lockerbie bomb on board a British Airways flight out of Heathrow in my hold luggage. And our flight was, unsurprisingly perhaps, selected for special security measures that would be taken in view of the way they had improved security since Lockerbie had happened. What actually happened at Heathrow Airport was that they knew who we were and they searched our luggage. And a lady from security at Heathrow opened my suitcase. Nobody except yours truly knew what was in that suitcase, not even my fellow travellers who were relatives of other victims. Nobody knew. And out of my suitcase, she picked up the Toshiba tape recorder, which, unknown to her, of course, had been made into a complete copy of the Lockerbie bomb. And I'd done that with certain precautions. Number one, I'd put it in my hold luggage because I didn't want anybody saying, "Oh my God, that might be Lockerbie," or halfway across the Atlantic and the flight being turned around and everybody panicking. I was determined that shouldn't happen, so I put it deliberately in hold luggage. And the device that I made, which I could show you a photograph if you want to see it, I made, which copied the terrorist device, contained a detonator dummy and a large chunk, not of Semtex, but of marzipan, which is yellow and smells of almond, just like Semtex does. The lady who lifted it out of my suitcase said, "Oh, hello, have you taken the batteries out of this, sir?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I've taken the batteries out," which was true. And she said, "Thank you very much," and put it back in the suitcase, put the clothes back in, and there was this thing, exactly a copy. And the point about that was, she clearly didn't see a reason why a Toshiba tape recorder of about the size described in the Lockerbie disaster evidence that was coming into the public domain at that stage, why that might be an object of interest. She didn't know. And there's a wide saying in the security industry, aviation security industry, and it's a very telling saying, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And that poor lady clearly had not been trained in what might or might not be dangerous. And I felt really sorry for her because she put it back. You could see she didn't realise what it meant.